The Carolina Hurricanes offseason is here, and the reason I know that is because Eric Tulsky and Rod Brind'amour had their end-of-season pressers this morning. And I don't think it's a mistake that they do the players and the coach and GM separate. So the players were last week, coach and GM today, because the players, like, there's a lot of retrospective there. There's a lot of looking at the past season, explaining what happened. And that makes sense because they don't have much control over how the offseason is going to go for the Carolina Hurricanes. Right? They don't know who they're going to go attack in free agency or the draft. They don't know what trades could potentially happen. And if they do, they would never let us know publicly. So when you talk to the players, it's a lot of breaking down hows and whats and what led to and how did you find yourself in this position, and you talk about the season, or you talk about the series that just ended. When you get to the coach and GM, to me, that's kind of off-season starting, and you're looking forward. Because coach and GM are the ones that hold the control panel, right? They're the ones that can put pen to paper, or in the sales world. Dennis, I don't know, do you ever have a sales job in your many?
I did.
Right, you got to get to the decision maker.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Don't let someone say no to you if they can't say yes to you. You got to get to the decision maker. Like Eric Tulsky and Rod Brind'amour, those are the guys that can decide what this offseason is like. Right? Their signatures mean something on trade agreements. So, to me, the offseason starts today. And I think it's nice to hear some of it. It's also a little nerve-wracking to hear some of it. We have audio from Eric Tulsky as he had his beginning of the offseason presser today, along with Rod Brind'amour. Here he has a clip of him talking about the young players they have on their team that could make the jump.
We have a lot of prospects who are doing really well. The team in Chicago this year was a very, very young team, and it made the playoffs and was competitive and had streaks where it looked like one of the best teams in the league. And those players are just getting better and better. You know, there's a gap between the AHL and the NHL, and we won't know until we get to seeing them in NHL action in preseason and training camp whether they're ready, but there's a lot of players who are on that cusp.
Which is very interesting. And obvious, like, we know the names, right? The Bradley Nadeau's, some others, that maybe a Felix Unger-Sorum, right? Those are the prospects that everybody gets excited about. If you still consider, like, Scott Morrow a prospect, he'd obviously be one of them. But they have seen him on quite a few NHL game actions, NHL shifts. Do you know what's the interesting part of that? That could be found depth. Because if he's saying we have to wait until we see these guys on NHL ice in training camp and preseason, well, you better have a complete roster by then that's not depending on them if they're still kind of unsure, right? So that could be that depth that we're talking about where you might have somebody who's like a NHL super solid, steady player as your 13th forward or as your 7th defenseman, right? And how you get there is you plan to have a full roster, and then one of your rookies ends up being a star. I would love for if this offseason Eric Tulsky goes out and he solves all the problems, right? He goes and gets the goal scorer. He goes and gets the right-hand center that they've been dreaming about. He goes and gets a veteran D-man. He gets all of it. And then Bradley Nadeau shows up and is like, there's no way. And he says this with his play. There's no way you're keeping me off the ice. All right, well, let's put you in there. We got to take out one of these super solid dudes that we had ready to play. That's how you get the organizational depth you're looking for. And then I'm calling this his mantra. I'll see if you can figure it out, but I'll break it down after. Here's Eric Tulsky on keep trying to get top-end players. And again, I think his mantra is mixed in here.
I prickle a little at the idea that it was a suggestion we needed something like, until we have all the best players in the league, we're going to keep trying to add. And it doesn't matter how many goal scorers we have. If there's a premium goal scorer out there who we can get, we're going to try and bring him in. I don't think Tampa or Dallas was looking at their team saying we really need a goal scorer. It's just you've got great players who you can bring in, you do it. And we're going to keep taking those swings every time we can.
His mantra is until we have the 20 best players in the league on our roster, we're going to keep trying to get better.
So Dave Canales, it's a great opportunity.
It is
Great opportunity.
inarguable.
Yeah.
There is nothing you can say in a rebuttal. Like there's no but. Except he's actually saying nothing there, right? That you're not going to ever have the 20 best players on your team. It's a really nice way to set yourself up to always be able to answer the phone, to always have conversations about trades, and do your best to not hurt feelings, right? I heard you were talking to so-and-so about so-and-so possibly being traded. Well, until we have the 20 best players on our roster, we're gonna do everything we can to bring in explore all options. It is a very nice thing to say. The question is, what's the order? I guess that's where I come from, because like if you have let me think of the example here. Let's say Jacob Slavin. Okay. What is he? And as far as all defensemen in the league, pretty safely, like top 5, would we say?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's say you have the option to get the number 1, but it's going to take Slavin plus. Wait a second. Hold up here. You said you wanted to get the best players on your roster. You can get a better player, but it doesn't make sense because you're already really good there. Meanwhile, at another position, right, maybe center, you could go from, where would you put Kokiniemi as far as ranked in the league centers?
I don't think I can count that high.
All right. If we conservatively say 106th, I don't know, just picking a number. If the 30th best center is out there, you're getting a whole bunch more spots better, but you're not chasing a top 20, right? You need to make sure you're getting better at the positions where you aren't good, not just blindly chasing the best players. Like, I'm sure if you talk to Florida or Dallas, or what do you say, Tampa or Dallas about getting a goal scorer, they weren't just looking for goal scorers. Well, I'm sure if they had Connor McDavid, they would have probably been looking somewhere else, right? You have to go. And he didn't say he's not doing it. He just kind of coach speaked around it. It's like, we want to know where you're going to spend your money on top-end players. I know you're always chasing top-end players. Which ones? And a lot of GMs wouldn't tell us, but that's what we're asking. And then, Dennis, I think you asked this question in the presser. I thought it led to a really good answer. Here's Eric Tulsky on finding the people that work in Carolina, not just the most talented.
That's very hard, and we want to do both. And we have a phenomenal culture here, and Rod is an incredible steward of the locker room and keeps things in the right frame of mind. And I don't want to make his job any harder than it needs to be at that. And so, we want to find players who can play and who will fit, but who will fit off the ice too, and step in and, listen to what he has to say, work with him, work with the teammates, fit in well. We want it to be a fun place to play. It's something I actually am very impressed by, is these guys compete so hard on the ice, and they come off the ice and they have a good time together, right? And it's, that's a special atmosphere that I'm not sure every team has. And, if we can keep building that, I think it helps make us what we are.
I feel like this lesson is being learned all over the state of Carolina, of North Carolina, where I think John Shire learned it over his time as the head coach at Duke. I think the Tulsky learned it with maybe the Mikko Rantanen deal, where talent on paper is tantalizing. But if you don't line up the personalities in the right way, if you don't line up the personal goals in the right way, it can go haywire on you no matter how talented the roster is. Right? I think the early Shire Duke teams had a lot of very good talent, don't get me wrong, but also there was a lot of whining and there was no nonsense players, the ferocious competitors on those teams, and I think it was missing. This past year I thought they had more of it. The Mikko Rantanen trade on paper, right? You put Mikko with Sebastian Aho on that front line, on the power play, on all, watch the heck out. But the part that wasn't really accounted for was, does he even want to be here? And that's the part that upended it all. So being clear on that, and I substitute hosted the Adam Gold Show today. I said this earlier. I don't like being a problems guy without a solutions guy. I have a really hard time discussing how I would do that. Like I think it's a handshake and you look him in the eye and you just got to get a vibe. But that feels like a really willy-nilly, wishy-washy thing to make like $100 million decision on, which is kind of what you were doing with Mikko Rantanen, right? That $100 million is basically what his contract came out to be. But I think a hard lesson learned, and I'm not saying it was this one, but I think most GMs and coaches learn it at some point. You have to be willing to walk away from what feels like a really good addition to your team because you just got a weird feeling in your stomach. And you're just like, I don't know. And you have to go, despite the scoring, despite the skating, despite the size, I feel like I just ate a bad omelet and I didn't eat anything today. Like that's got to be enough for you to walk away. And that's got to be insanely tough with how tantalizing talent is.